Hi,
I'm here.
how are
Hi,
you?
everybody.
So good to see you.
So good to see you too, Parisa. Thank you so much for
Of course,
wanting to collaborate and do this video today. And
of course, of course. I honestly think this is one of my favorite topics to talk about and to learn about because there's a lot going on about it. So thank you for being
okay,
here.
my
Um,
pleasure. I just want to make sure I look like I'm really up close, and I swear the camera is actually
no, it's
kind of
perfect.
far.
I can see you great.
Okay.
I'm sure everybody's fine with it. So I was telling everyone I'm sitting in my husband's office. It's a little echoey, and my baby is sleeping. I hope she doesn't wake
Oh,
up in the middle of this, or she'll be joining us sitting here with me,
that's okay.
talking
Intuitively,
a
she's
lot.
gonna know that Mama is like doing a video.
Yeah, usually when that happens, her eyes are like open right away.
Right.
But so let's dive into it. I
Yeah, let's
really
go
wanted
into
to
it.
talk about this, about intuition, because I think it's something that we're born with it and we lose it at some point. And by we, I say myself and a lot of people that I see around me. So first thing first, I want to ask you this. What is intuition? Like, how do you define
Oh,
intuition?
this is not, I don't feel like there's a simple answer for this particular topic because I feel intuition is, first of all, there's so many different concepts, there's so many different beliefs around it. For me, and this is just my opinion, intuition is our ability to listen to our body's wisdom and to also connect with our multidimensional parts of ourselves that are not grounded, let's just say, in this earthly physical form.
Mhm.
It's, the sixth sense. And what I mean by sixth sense, it can be a multitude, like a variety of different ways and kind of intuitive sort of capabilities and gifts that we have as individuals. For most people, I think where intuition begins is it begins in the body, it
Mhm.
begins neck down versus just
In the
listening
head.
to all the chatter and all the egoic kind of stories and tendencies that are going on in our minds. So
Yeah.
I believe it's wisdom, it's guidance, it's information, it's data, it's a knowing, it's a recognition, a remembrance. It could be so many different things, but it's definitely something that's beyond the mind and
Yeah.
beyond. I mean, the mind works with our intuition, of course. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but you have to be able to listen to what's happening in your body and
Yeah.
also start to develop the different kinds of clairs that one
Mhm.
can have to start having a multi-sensory, dimensional experience of our reality that's not just what's happening in the 3D plane. Is that a
Yeah.
helpful
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah, of course.
perspective?
When I think about intuition, what comes to the experience that comes to my mind is like my mom. My mom is like the definition of intuition for me because I remember when I was little, what would happen it was that every time I have a brother 5 years younger than me. So every time we asked her for something or go somewhere or do something, either she would be like, okay, or she would be like, okay, but I have a feeling we shouldn't, right? Or she
Right,
would be like, okay, but I have a feeling we should do it this way. And us being little kids and stubborn, we would be like, no, we want it our way. And
right,
every single time, what she would say that she has a feeling about it would turn out right. She would be like, oh, I have a feeling we shouldn't go camping this weekend. And we'd be like, no, we want to go. And we would go and we would have flat tire or something would
right,
always happen,
right,
right? And it got to a point that for me, even as an adult or when I was in college at like older age, when I wanted to do something, I would go to her and I would be like, Mom, what's your feeling about this? Like, what does your feeling tell you? That would be like exact words that I would use. What does your gut feeling tell you? And I had no idea about like intuition or the word, like the meaning of it, but that in my head has always stuck that she knew.
mm,
She always knew. Somehow she had a feeling about like she wouldn't say I think this and that. She would say that my feeling tells me we shouldn't do this, right? Or we should do that. So that has always stuck with me, and that's why like every time, even to this date, every time like I have a conflict in making decisions or wanting to do something, I call her, and she lives like all the way across the world. I call her, I'm like, what's your feeling about this? And it's right on every single time. So that's
Mama's
like
intuition
mama's
knows.
intuition, yeah. And honestly, to be honest with you, since I have a 10 months old, and since I've been a mom, it works better. Everything works.
I was going to ask you because
It's
they say that
changed.
women's intuition begins to develop even more at an accelerated rate. It deepens,
Yep.
it becomes more accessible after a woman has had a baby. So
It's
that's been your
amazing.
experience.
It's definitely been my experience, and it's something that's been on my radar. It's not something that I'm just like noticing, but the like you said, the chatter that's happening, the voice of intuition has been much more significant since I gave
Yeah.
birth.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's been
It
completely
absolutely
bold.
does. And it's probably, there's like a primal, instinct that also starts to kick in. Something I think opens because women going through the birthing process. I'm not a mom.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in the the stewardship and the mothering of birthing a new consciousness, and I'm a dog mama. And I've always felt and known this lifetime that I'm not meant to mother children unless it's like some godly expression or experience that happens in the next few years.
Yeah.
I've never felt that connection to having a child. I love kids. I think kids are beautiful. I get along with them, but I've never had that connection to them. So I've always wondered, like when a woman goes through the process, the initiation of giving birth, what that opens her up to, because you literally are in this, you're carrying a soul inside of your body.
Yeah.
And birthing it through, and the experience of that is unlike anything that anyone can really explain unless you have that experience. And it's so beautiful and blessed that women get to have that. So I love hearing these stories about women who have children because they all say the same thing. My intuition just really increased the moment I gave birth and I had my child.
Yeah, exactly. But my question for you, next question is, we have a lot of chatter, right? We have a lot happening in our head, and it's like with our busy lives and everything going on, and all the emotions and all the like fear talking, emotions talking, like everything going on. The voice of intuition, which you said it's head down, not head up. But it's for me, it's all here. Like if it's blended together, how do we recognize it? Like what can help us to bring that out, except being a mother? Like what can help us to bring that out more and have it on our practice? I know it's not like a 1 second thing, even though it could be, but how do we like consciously bring it out more and like bring the voice of other stuff lower?
Yeah, this is a great question. I love this. It's one I get asked actually quite often. So I'm going to kind of give a step-by-step process, although I will tell you right now, it doesn't need to be a step-by-step process. I'm just going to kind of follow what I'm channeling and hearing coming through that I think might have whoever's watching, whoever listens to a replay, be able to decipher and kind of practically apply it, let's say, into their lives. So for starters, it can be up here too for people, but it's different. It's a different voice. It's a different tone. It's a different feeling. It's a different kind of guidance than ego. And I would say that for most people trying to develop the clairs, so the basic clairs that I think most teachers talk about, and there are more, but I'll talk about just kind of the basic ones, is the clairvoyance, which is clear seeing from the third eye, clairaudience, which is clear hearing when you hear, messages coming into the ears, clear knowing, which is just this felt sense, this knowing mentally, even like there's like maybe a precognition, or like your mom was like, I just know we shouldn't go camping this weekend, right? Yep. And then there's a clairsentience, which is a feeling, which is more of that. I think most people probably have a little bit more of the clairsentience that they end up developing, which you'll feel it more in your body. There's just this feeling of this feels really good and this feels really right, or this feels really yucky and just doesn't feel aligned for me. And it's not so black or white either. There's a lot of gray in intuition, but you know, for people who typically come to me, a lot of clients who are like, you know what, I really want to start strengthening and listening to my intuition. What do I start to do? The first thing I always try to tell my clients is, what are your practices like to connect with yourself? Because when we are immersed in this world, we're in a certain brainwave frequency. We're in a beta brainwave frequency. So this is scientific. This is measured. We're consciously engaging. Right now we're in beta because we are connecting with each other. It's our conscious awareness. When you connect to yourself, you start to slow down that brain chatter, and you start to slow down the brain waves, and you start to enter into more of an alpha state, which is more of the flow state, where things are slowing down. The nervous system isn't so hyperactive and in fight or flight. You're not projecting out into the future or in, you know, reminiscing, thinking about your past. You're more present. Because we have to remember, intuition and the guidance that comes in the present moment. So when you're thinking about what you need to do 3 hours from now or 2 weeks from now, or you're, you know, focusing on what happened a few months ago in your life, you're not being present to what is in this moment. And so the more that you can develop practices that have you connect to yourself. So this can look like meditation. This can look like breath work. This can look like literally just sitting in a chair and just not focusing on anything. It starts to have you get more comfortable with being present with yourself. Now, yes, initially there's going to be a lot of mental chatter because that's what we're used to doing. But there's so many incredible tools that you can use to slow brainwave patterns down, you know, using alpha frequencies, binaural beats, you know, there's so many YouTube videos and guided meditations that help you to kind of enter into that more still state with yourself, that it starts to become something you look forward to versus something you're afraid of. So, you know, meditation and all that, they're very good practices. The next thing I would say is really having a clear intention around intuition. You know, I think we can be co-partnered with our, you know, our higher self, our I am presence, our divine connection. And we can really set intentions, especially before bed. This is really great because our subconscious mind is more open to suggestions in between going to sleep, like when we're kind of half asleep, half awake, and in the mornings when we're half awake and still half asleep. And when we create intentions from this space, the intention of I am that I am, you know, open and willing to expand my intuitive awareness, my intuitive gifts, my intuitive connection to my body and to my soul and to divine intelligence now. You know, when we start to create an expression or an affirmation or incantation or intention from the I am place, which is our one of our highest connections to our soul, to our multidimensional self, then we start to allow the subconscious and our body to open up to having a different experience. Now, that doesn't mean that your intuition the next day when you wake up after creating this intention is going to be exploding. It could. You could go through a big spiritual awakening. A lot of people have that, where they go through their awakenings and all of a sudden they have gifts that they never knew were available to them. And it happened very suddenly. But for most people, that's a very jarring experience, especially for the nervous system, because more information is coming in from the outside world. More information is being read from, you know, the environment and from the people around you. And it can be a very difficult experience having your intuition open that way. So when it's more gradual.
And it could be confusing, right?
Yeah, it could be confusing. It could be discombobulating. It could feel very ungrounding. I'm sorry, I have like an eyelash sticking in my eye here. That's the worst feeling. But when it happens more gradually, there's a sense of ease going into it. You know, I've always said, I think having a mentor, having a guide, doing a course or a program, you know, can be very helpful for those things, but it's not necessary. I think it's really starting to also, when you close your eyes and you do your breathing or your meditation, like notice what's happening in your body and get clear. Like the last step I'll say is like starting to really get clear on when you're in, like notice in your past when you have been having intuitive guidance or your intuition has been telling you things, because it's always communicating. Your body is always communicating. The only difference is are you paying attention to it? Are you listening? Are you witnessing it? Because the more that you can start to notice, like I call it embodiment work, where you start to focus and bring witness and awareness to your body and the bodily sensations. When you feel like you are a yes, a full-bodied yes, what does that feel like for you? How do you know when something is true for you, when it feels good for you? Like, what are the patterns? What are the sequences and the sensations that you feel inside of you? When something feels like you're not sure, you're uncertain, what does that feel like for you in your body?
So
And
being aware of that.
Yeah, like a red flag, like a no, what is that? So everybody is going to be different. And that's the one thing that you can't, like my yes may be different from your yes, Carissa, in how it shows up in your body. So we cannot compare experiences to other people. Yeah. So this is why it's like really slowing down. And I mean, I know I said it was gonna be step by step. I didn't go step 1, step 2, step 3, but I hopefully you can kind of weave and pull out the information and write it down if you're watching this, to kind of get clear on how you can begin this process. I mean, there's more, of course, but I feel like this is a good kind of opening or beginning process for people who are or maybe not familiar to this, because the last piece is trusting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you don't trust, if you don't act, if you don't listen, if you don't follow what the intuition is telling you, then you may think you don't have intuition. Like, this is the thing that I think a lot of people have a block around. Oh, I'm not intuitive. I'm not intuitive. I never get anything. I never hear anything. And it's like, okay, I actually want to challenge that. Are you actually listening to what your body is saying? Are you listening to what's happening in your environment? Are you getting still enough to be open to receive a sensation or a message or a color or a feeling or a knowing? Like, are you paying attention?
And it comes through experiment, right? The trust thing, I think, is, like you said, is the most important step to do. But it comes through experiment, like listening, because let me tell you from my own experience, because I think, especially recently after I've been a mom, like you said, having the intention for it is very important. The first step, the foundation of it is to have the intention, right? To make sure that I'm aware of a voice of intuition existing inside of me or in my head or wherever you feel it. For me, it comes in a form of just knowing. So it's up here. It happens sometimes that I feel like it's just my gut feeling. There's a feeling, but usually it's a form of knowing. And it's usually much more bold in the mornings. And it's been like, very interesting, because I put my baby to sleep like a few times during the day. Now it's only 2 eyes. Thank God I don't have to sit in a dark room with a baby for that long. But but those moments of sitting in the dark room trying to put her to sleep, those are the moments that have been very eye-opening to me. Those are like, because there's not much stimulation. I don't have my phone. The voices, I have a night, what do you call it? White noise on. So I don't hear much. It's dark. I don't see much. All I see is the furniture in her room. So I'm sitting there. The ears are not working much. My eyes are not working much. And there's not much stimulation. So there's a lot that I can know. And there's a lot that comes to me that happens in those moments while I'm trying to put her to bed. And I know my brain starts like going off, because I'm like, at first, especially, it was very challenging. I'm not used to sitting somewhere. Still, like I can't do that. I'm not used to not having my phone. I'm not used to not having any like nothing. It just would drive me crazy. But then after like having to do it for a while, like being forced to do it, then I'm like, okay, maybe this is great. It's amazing. There's a lot for my business that I process when I'm sitting there, and decisions that I'm making. And especially like if I'm up early in the morning doing it, sometimes she wakes up at 4 or 5 a.m. So it's like, it's been very helpful. So like you said, having the intention that I want to listen to this. I want to recognize this voice. I want to be able to trust it, have the intention, and then being able to form an environment. And if you don't have a baby, you could just like you said, meditate, or create a daily practice, some sort of a practice that would really bring this out and help magnify that voice or that knowing or that feeling, and being able to trust it. So I got to tell you a story that happened recently. Last weekend, not this last one, the one before that. I was supposed to go to San Diego to see my friends, and my baby was sick for like 10 days. And her doctor told me if she doesn't have a fever for more than 24 hours, she won't be contagious. So if you want to go, just go ahead. But it's going to be a hell because she's sick. Like, you're tired. You haven't slept for 10 nights. So it's like, it was like a lot happening. I wake up and my flight was at 8 a.m. I wake up at 6, and I didn't, maybe that night I got like 1 or 2 hours of sleep. I wake up and I'm like, you know what? I should probably go. I'm not going to get sleep. She's going to be sick anyways. So let me just go and see everyone. I really want to see my friends. So I wake her up, pack her. And as I'm doing that, I'm like, my feeling is telling me I should not do this. Like it's like I'm telling myself this. My intuition is telling me I should not go. And then I stop and I'm like, but who cares? What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to go. Right. And I know this is my intuition because it's told me things before. Do this, don't do that. This is a good idea, not a good idea. And I've experimented with it. So I've listened to it. And I'm like, okay, this was that feeling told me to do this, and it was an amazing experience. I should have listened to it, and I did. And I haven't listened to it, and I've told myself, I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I did it. So I've been conscious of it, and I've been experimenting a lot with it. So now when it's telling me something, I know this is it. This is the one that I should listen to. And even when I don't listen to it, I know that I'm going against my intuition. And that weekend was like hell. My husband had to drive from LA, come get us because I got sick. It was like a shit show. So true shit show. But the experimenting with it caused me to be able to have trust, right? And when I don't listen to it, I know I should trust it, but I'm not doing it because I'm just stubborn, right?
Well, yeah, that's usually the ego, right? Because and a lot of people ask, well, how do I know what's intuition, the voice of intuition, and what's the ego, or what's the typical mind chatter? Mm-hmm. Your mind chatter tends to be, it can be very fear-based. It comes sometimes from like a state of separation. There's a reactivity. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit nudgier, pushier, maybe a little bit sometimes more aggressive. Mm-hmm. in the way it can communicate. Like, I want it this way. It wants to be in control. Yep. And it wants to control a lot of outcomes. It's very attached to things being a certain way. Like the thing around your story about, no, I'm going to go. I'm just going to go. Like, it was very attached to making it work. Yep. And if your intuition was on board with it, it would have felt probably so much more easeful, right? And, and just, okay, yeah, it feels
not forceful,
right to go. There's no, as I'm checking in with myself, there's no other voice coming in saying, no, don't go. Intuition has more of a loving expression and tonality, at least in my own being. It feels more gentle. It is definitely less reactive. It's more responsive. There's just a feeling of non-attachment. But if there's some danger that we need to be avoided, it can be very loud. But typically it starts off a little quieter, and then if we're not listening, it finds ways to get our attention more. And that's the thing, we can choose, because we have free will, to not listen to, this. I sometimes find it like the voice of my soul, the voice of my being versus my personality. It just knows certain things. And you get rewarded, I find. And I say this very loosely because I don't like this word rewarded, but your intuition rewards you when you listen to it by seeing that things in your life start to go a certain kind of way. It doesn't mean that there's no challenges or difficulties, because we're here to learn and grow. This is Earth School, right? Like, this is what we're here for. But when you listen to your intuition, there's just more that starts to open up, more opportunities, more experiences. There seems to be more synchronicities. Life tends to go more in the flow versus being out of sync with your life because your ego wants it to go a certain way when maybe that's not the most easeful direction for you to go. And so listening to your intuition can come at a cost. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've listened to my intuition and it's been hard lessons from doing that, like disappointments, you know, when my gifts really started to open up. And just for the audience to know, I've been intuitive my whole life. And I've been very clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient, and claircognizant. So I've had a lot of my clairs open. Sometimes one will be a little bit more in the background or more delayed in terms of its development until later in life. But I've been pretty open my entire life, and I started to do trance channeling work several years ago. So, you know, I've done mediumship work, psychic work, intuitive work. That's, you know, a large portion of my business. I bring those gifts to help my clients to accelerate their journeys, you know, and their evolution and their careers and then their personal lives. And, you know, there's been many times where I've had information that's come to me. I remember when I was dating, you know, I'm married now, but I remember when I was dating, my intuition on the first date would say, this guy is not for you. And I wouldn't listen to it. And I would be dating somebody for like 3 months, and then I would have my heart broken. And I would remember being like, my ego was in so much pain. I was so upset. My human part of me was so upset. But this voice behind me would say, I warned you from the beginning about this, Vanessa. Like, don't think that you weren't protected. Like, God is not against you. Your guides, your higher self, we're not against you. We're protecting you. We were telling you, this isn't your guide. But you went and had the experience. And now you know better to listen to your intuition. So I have lots of things over the course of my lifetime where I would get information like, this is not a person you can trust, that you shouldn't go into this business deal. This is how this relationship is going to go. This isn't the thing for you. Don't do this. And I would listen to it. So sometimes, you know, it's not about going against it all the time, but I would listen to it. And it's okay to still feel the disappointment and the sadness for things that maybe we would want to work out or we had hopes.
But it's an experience, right?
Exactly. And I think the more that we allow ourselves to have these experiences, the more we can look at our intuition as something that is working for us, not against us. And our egos aren't working against us either. Our ego is just here having this experience that it needs to have so that we can be human. We can be relatable, right? So
but when you mentioned the flow, the state of flow, I read a book about it. I don't remember the exact name. I have it on my highlighted stories on my page. It's about being in the state of flow, but it talks about extreme sports athletes, right?
Oh, yes.
It's like how when you get to the zone, when you are in the zone, which happens a lot when you do extreme sports. So when you're like skiing or skydiving, or like, and I know that because I do skiing and I used to do skydiving. So it's like when you do that, your mind is like, it doesn't talk anymore. They're like, when you're in the zone, the mind is like shut off, right? And all you hear is other stuff. It's like a higher power that you have at that point. And that's the thing that it gets you through moments that are live or die. It's like a millisecond that you make a decision that you could you could have like crashed, right? But you make that decision so intuitively. And at that point, the time doesn't matter. Like it doesn't feel like a millisecond. It feels like, I don't know how long. The time doesn't exist anymore. And I think it happens. It's like great to have the experience with it through other means, like sports. Like it's healthy. It's like, or a lot of people do it through like channel opening medicine or stuff like that. But
making art,
exactly.
Music.
There you go. So there are like things that can get us there. Like you said, like immediately. And when we have the experience with it, then it's easier to recognize it. Right.
Yes.
And I think with my personal experience that every time I've had that experience of being in the zone or being in the state of flow, the fear is gone. There's no fear. That doesn't exist. And when the fear is not talking, then there's a lot of other stuff that comes out that we know, that we embody, like the body talks, right? And it could be, you could like, it's just regardless of any sort of beliefs that people have. It could be God, it could be like Jesus, it could be through religion, it could be through the universe, it could be, if you believe in anything other than physical body, higher than physical body.
Yeah.
It could be anything that you want to call it. You can name it anything you want, but it's like through, like you said, like higher self or whatever you want to call it. But to me, it happens when fear doesn't talk. And I think fear comes from, it's either, when you think about it, it's either like a generational fear, I call it. Like, let's say I have financial fear. Right. I have, and when I have the financial fear, I keep asking myself, okay, you're afraid of losing money. Why? What's the worst that could happen? Then I'm like, well, then I'm going to be in financial distress. Then I ask myself, well, what's going to happen then? Then what's the worst case scenario? Then I keep going and going and going. And then I come to, well, I'm afraid of being homeless. Right. And that's like absurd. I've never experienced being homeless. So it's not a fear that's already happened to me or could happen to, it probably would never happen, right? But it's something that from the generational mind or the universal mind, that's like the accumulation of generation of thoughts and fears. It just exists there, and the whole power of the mind is there to warn us and to make sure that we're safe. It's just like a safety tool, right? So that kind of fear is one thing. Another kind of fear is like the trauma or experience fear, something that I've experienced in my past that now if it's about to happen or my mind keeps warning me that make sure that doesn't happen again, right? Because the trauma is still in my body and in my mind. So these two, I think it's very important to, if we are conscious and if, like you said, if we have the intention of bringing out the voice of intuition, it's very important to recognize these voices or these chatters and see, where is it coming from? Is it coming from my fear? What's really like, is it my ego? Is it like really trying to force something, like you said, or is it with ease? Usually I think ego talks and talks and talks. Intuition is just there. It says something and just sits back, and you want to listen to it, you don't want to listen to it. There's no force, like you said, it's easy. But the ego is like, and the fears are like, they keep going, right? They don't give up. They don't leave you alone. And sometimes I honestly think it's much harder to say no to the mind and to the fears because they're much more tangible. And it's easier to say no to intuition.
I would agree. Sometimes it can be. I mean, and you made some really good points because, you know, differentiating between the fears, the generational fears or past trauma. I mean, the point of the mind and the ego essentially is to protect us and keep us safe, right? It's like a survival mechanism.
Yep.
And so it wants to do whatever it can to keep you in whatever moment safe and protected, because if it doesn't know what a certain experience will be like, it doesn't trust the unknown, right? It doesn't trust uncertainty. So the voice of intuition could be giving you wisdom or guidance, right, that leads you to a path that's unknown, that's uncharted, and doesn't feel safe. And then the doubt kicks in, and then the fears kick in. So, I mean, I love those points because it's so true. I think one of the things that has really helped me, I don't know if you can relate to this too, but I mean, I have been really committed for many years to doing a lot of inner work. And
yeah, me too, for
you
sure.
know, it's like the more emotional work you do, the more trauma work you do, the more
Emotional
cleansing.
cleansing.
Cleansing, like looking at the different kind of programs that are running. And what I mean by programs, it's like everything's a program. Fear is a program.
Yeah.
You know,
Conditioning.
I can't trust my intuition, or I can't do this, or I'm not allowed to have that, or I'm not deserving, or I'm not good. These are all different programs and beliefs, limiting beliefs that basically, when I trans channel, what's been coming through a lot for people is like, imagine that when you're born, right? From the beginning of our conversation, you had said, when we're born, it's so much easier to access this. Why? Because when we're born, we have literally just stepped from, if you want to call it the other side, there's no filters. There's no programming. And so that's why a child is most programmable up until the age of like 7 or 8. their brain is developing, their subconscious is developing. They're like sponges in their environment. And so as we go through life, more and more programs from our parents, from our ancestry, our lineage, from the environment we've grown up in, to our socioeconomic status, to the people that we surround ourselves with, to our education, everything, you know, our epigenetics, right, start to dictate all the programming that we have, the experiences we have, the traumas, whether they're major traumas or they're small traumas that accumulate over time. And so what this does is it ends up putting these layers, almost like, imagine like layers of like eggshell. That's the vision that they've always given me. Imagine you have like these eggshells, but there's more and more eggshells that just keep going over you. So
I call it an onion. It's like layers of onion.
It's a perfect example.
Yeah.
And the more that you have going on, the more that you're kind of filtering out, not just the bad stuff, like you're protecting yourself, but also the good stuff. Also the infinite wisdom and potentiality and possibility that you have for your life. And so part of, I believe, our work, especially during this time, is doing our shadow work, is doing the deeper transformational work. It's really looking at the subconscious beliefs and the conscious, you know, stories and narratives we have about ourselves and our lives. And this is in direct correlation to intuition and connecting to universal wisdom and whatever it might be, if it's God or source or universe, like you're talking about, or life. The more that we kind of let go of those filters, we take the lessons and the gifts from those experiences, and we allow our infinite self, the multidimensional part of ourself, to start to shine through, to start to guide us more in our lives. And I call this, in my business, is called Soul Aligned Success. And the reason why I called it that is because when I started to allow more of the soul, I started to co-partner, I say God, you know, source, to work with me, my life started to change. My dreams started to come true. I started to feel so much better about myself. And now, please don't think for a second I don't have bad days. I don't have bad weeks. Like, I've gone through many dark nights of the soul. But the more I kept God out, the more I stopped listening to my intuition and my divine guidance that was coming through, the harder my life was. Yeah. And so, you know, I want to just really encourage and also invite people, like, if you really want to develop your intuition, it's going to be some work, and you have to pay attention to all those layers, all the armor, all the onion, you know, layers that you have accumulated over the course of your lifetime. And it's not about getting rid of all of it. I want to be honest. Like, it's not about, oh my God, I got to get rid of all of this stuff. It's going to take me 100 years to do that, depending on the kind of life someone.
Yeah, we're not supposed to get rid of them.
You're not supposed to get rid of it. You're meant to acknowledge and be with all of it, but to not let it control and dictate your life through fear, but to open you up to more love, to open, like, intuition is about opening. It's about allowance. It's about receiving. So if you're blocked there, it's very difficult to allow more of that information, more of that guidance to come in, right? So for me, that's been a huge part of my path for the last, you know, couple of decades, is really focusing not just on my intuition and all of that, but really like getting to know who I am and getting to know what my gifts are and getting myself to be more in union with God, with my soul, to lead my life and to have my divine plan unfold, versus Vanessa, the small self, the ego, trying to control everything. Because let me tell you, there was a time where that I've had so many control issues come up, and there was no room for that to come through because I didn't trust it.
Yeah. And something that you said that really resonated with me is survival doesn't allow any of this happen, right? And we all, because of our experiences, like, we all go through a certain amount of pain when we grow up. Everybody does, whether they acknowledge it or not, whether they like even acknowledge it to themselves or not, and just want to have this like pretty picture, perfect thing. But we all go through a certain amount of pain, and we all at some point need to survive, right? And that survival mode that's embodied, like our, even like physically, our physical body is in survival mode, right? It's not just it's like the energy that like translates into everything. So when we are in physical mode, in survival mode, it makes it really difficult to really silence that chatter, or like you said, like really peel the onion and figure out what's the core of it and what's inside of it. And honestly, my experience has been, and I've been doing like trauma work and like you said, shadow work for about 8 years now, and like consciously as an adult for 8 years. And I don't think there's an end to it. I think the more you peel, the more you find, right? We're like, that's why they call humans infinite beings, because there is no end to it. There's no end to us. There's no end to the work that we can do and the growth that we can have. And the more we look into all this, the more we peel the onion, the more we take out the eggshells, like you said, the more we can know ourselves and the more that we can find out about ourselves. And honestly, I think if we can step out of that survival mode, and it's a habit, it's just difficult to break mind habits, it's difficult to break physical habits. Like even like imagine like you wake up every day at like 8 a.m. you want to wake up at 6 a.m. like even like that little thing, it's hard to do because we're physically wired to do it, we're mentally wired. So changing not only mental conditioning, or like you said, changing or programming, changing like even physically changing it and going through the transformation, it just takes a lot. It's not like like I said, it could happen like this, but usually for most of us it's a work in progress. So being able to step out of being able to acknowledge that I am in survival mode right now, what does that mean? Like what does it mean being in a survival mode, and how can I like be aware of it, and how can I transform that and step out of survival mode and become more conscious and work on myself more, take out all the conditioning and all the programming and like heal the trauma, because most of the conditioning and most of the fear comes through trauma and past experiences. So like being able to layer that onion and keep layering because it won't end, right? But the more you do it, the more everything becomes clear, the more we can think more clearly, the more we can like you call it channel, or we can be in the know, or whatever your belief system is, the more we can tap into that divine source and source of information that that exists to all of us. We don't need to learn through books, you know, we know it all. It's just like the opening up for it to come to us. I think getting out of survival mode is the first step.
You know, survival mode is something that I've been focusing on a lot in my years of study. And when I started to trance channel, so I trance channeled the Pleiadian guides, they're just advisors. They're not gods, they're just advisors that work with me. And they spoke about a few years ago in some of my earlier channelings with them about survival mode and how that programming has been deeply embedded in generations of human beings. And it is the first step and the key to really unlocking our infinite potentiality as beings, because it is not actually our natural state.
Yeah.
Being in survival mode is not where we are meant to be yet. And I want to make it very clear, survival mode is not just about money. We talk about survival mode, it's not just about, you know, having a roof over your head. That's a part of it. That's a part of the equation to that. Because I've worked with many people, and I have felt this way too. The same thing about the money piece. When you've got a lot of money, if there's still survival mode running and operating within you, it's never going to feel like it's enough. Mm-hmm. You're going to be afraid of losing it. You're going to be afraid of really enjoying it, because there still is some sort of survival patterning or programming that's operating and controlling your mind from fear. So survival mode is huge. And, you know, I've been a really big advocate. For many years, I've studied the nervous system. Not as much from, let's say, a scientific perspective, although I know quite a bit of that, but also from really working on the nervous system for myself. And the nervous system, really, it's like the electrical system, that when your nervous system is in survival mode, it does not have enough energy and bandwidth, resiliency, resourcefulness to tackle more of our problems, including when we're in survival mode. And so that's why I've done a lot of network chiropractic work over the years, a lot of energetic work on my nervous system, chiropractic work, but not just, manipulating just for the sake of getting the neck or the body into alignment. It's also focusing on the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and the energetic components of that. Because when your nervous system is not in survival mode and you've activated the parasympathetic system, you have so much more energy available to A, listen to intuition, but B, to tackle the stress and the problems in your life. And we have to remember that as human beings, we are much more easily controlled and manipulated when we're in fear and survival.
Yeah, very
We've
true.
seen this campaign running, dare I say it, the last year, and that's my beliefs. I mean, it's like when people are in fear, they turn off the ability to hear and listen to what's true, because fear is the survival program. I don't want to die. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to be homeless. So we start to make choices that are actually not maybe from our highest self, but from the part of us that is like from the amygdala that's been hijacked by all of this fear-based information coming at us.
Yeah.
And this is why I think so many people right now in the masses have had such a hard time really tuning in and trusting their intuition and themselves right now, because they know, a lot of the sources and people outside of us know and have known for thousands of years, that the easiest way to keep a population from actually accessing and awakening to their highest potentiality is through fear.
Yep. And we see it a lot in, I don't want to get into politics, but we see it a lot because I'm from Iran. So we see it a lot in third world countries and in societies that are under a lot of pressure. We see it a lot from outside, but when it happens on the inside, it's hard to recognize it, right? And it's easy to be manipulated by fear, like you said, because it's our mind. And we're smart, and the mind is talking in a very smart and intellectual way, and it's telling you things that are like, and we don't recognize that there's so much fear behind it, and it's like it's just it amazes me. I don't want to go into politics, but
it's a very powerful thing, and it's not just politics. It's everywhere, but politics is a huge area, and I think it's like, this is why I'm such an advocate, and it sounds like you are too, Parisa, around people really knowing themselves and connecting to themselves. Because the more that you have a devotional practice to this, the more that you are really connecting and listening to your intuition, to your body's wisdom, then you start to be able to learn how to discern truth, which I feel truth comes from more of a frequency of love versus the fear, which is, pulling you in a direction that may not be aligned for you. Now, that doesn't mean that people who are, making decisions aren't always in fear. We may not agree with their decisions. We may say, oh, that's a fear-based decision. But for them, that might be a part of their soul's agenda, their plan to do certain things.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's right or wrong. I think we do all this, and even if we make fear-based decisions for it's like I said, it's an experience, and we grow from our experiences, and we wake up from our experiences, right? So when something, I think what we could consider being aware of is that when a pattern repeats itself over and over and over, then maybe it's time to make a change and make a shift, right? But it doesn't mean there's a right or wrong. It's just like it exists. We're living this life. We're learning from every single thing, whether you listen to your fear or your mind or your intuition. At the end of the day, it's a perfectly great decision because the outcome makes us grow in a way, right?
Exactly.
And that growth gets us closer and closer to peeling and getting to the core, right?
I love this. This is such a fun conversation.
I know. I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation, and thank you for making time. Is there anything else that you want to add before I ask for questions?
No, I mean, I'm wondering if the audience has any questions about this. We're getting a lot of hearts, which is really sweet.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of love
Thank you for
coming
that.
in. But I'm curious, like, if any of you have questions for Parisa and myself about this conversation, type it in the box. Is this resonating? What are the takeaways so far that you're learning from this conversation?
I saw one while you were talking that
Okay.
I saw one going on. I probably missed a few, but one was that how do you turn off the chatter or overthinking? How do you turn off the overthinking? But I think we covered that for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
That overthinking comes a lot from fear.
From fear.
And
And I want to just say this about intuition and, the chatter and all. It's a discipline. It's a practice.
yeah,
Like you were saying about the habit, right? We're in the habit of overthinking. I am a huge overthinker.
me too.
Every person I work with is like, you are in your head way too much. And I'm like, I know. If you could hear all around here. So for me, it is imperative that I get off my devices, because that's the one thing, like our devices and our technology are a huge pull on our focus, on our attention to something outside of ourselves, to source our dopamine and endorphins and adrenaline and outrage and
anxiety. I mean, I
anxiety.
think
Yes.
like Instagram is the biggest source of anxiety for me. It's not that, no, it's not, it doesn't give me anxiety. Is that when I scroll, I'm like, I feel I'm anxious, I scroll and if I like pause for a second, I'm like, whew, like I need to put this down.
Right.
But yep.
And it's designed to keep you on these apps. I mean, it's scientifically and psychologically developed to hijack our brains in this sense.
Yeah,
and
but
so,
there's a good and bad side into anything,
of
right?
course,
So it has amazing side,
life.
and yeah.
Yeah. And so we have to be in control of our usage and to actually take, ourselves out of the scenarios where we're utilizing our apps or our social media or devices too much, and like going out and being in nature, or making conscious time in our calendars every day. This 30-minute window, there's no interruptions, there's no TV, there's no laptop, there's no email, there's no phone, there's no social media. It's like I'm sitting with myself and I'm going to journal or I'm going to meditate. I mean, it's a discipline. Intuition's a muscle that you're always going to be working and flexing. There's going to be times where you are so much more open than other times. I think diet also plays a big part in this too.
Definitely. Exercise, diet,
exercise,
physical,
diet,
like it's like the connection between the mind, the body, and this soul, or whatever you want to call it, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, so that's my only.
There was one other question about, could you please tell me more about the relation with the synchronicity?
Okay. What specifically would you like to know about the relationship with synchronicity? Just a little bit more specific on that. It would be great. Do you want to ask me the other question that you had, Parisa, in the meantime? While this, nothing's showing up on my end. Oh, wait, it's not moving. That's why I'm not seeing anything. There's all these, there's all these comments and I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I think the relationship between like synchronicity and intuition, like how to connect those two together.
So could you please tell me more about the relation to synchronicity?
Yeah.
Okay, well, synchronicities, that's an interesting thing. I mean, I'd love to know a little bit more specific beyond Mirage, if you can ask, like, in what capacity and what you mean by that. I mean, the thing for me, synchronicities require paying attention. I almost feel like it's, synchronicities tell me I'm on the right path. And the more that I listen to my intuition, the more it's like, it feels to me that and I know that there's probably scientific kind of reasoning for all of this, and even other people might have a better definition than me around this, but for me, it feels very much like I'm in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
This is the alignment. I'm on the right path. There's an alignment here. It's like the right people are coming in, the right situations are aligning. I'm not having to make everything coalesce into my life for greater coherence and alignment. It's like
things are flowing.
Yeah, it's a flow, and it's like I always feel like it's God meeting me halfway and saying, you got this, girl. Like, keep going, you know?
Yep.
There's just this beautiful sort of just flow and movement with my life that feels and shows me that I'm in alignment. So that's
Yep.
what synchronicity really, and being in relationship with synchronicity means to me. I don't
And
know
I
if you
think it
have
goes
something
hand in
different.
hand, right? It's like the more the intuition is working, the more synchronicity we have, and the more synchronicity we have, the intuition is more. We're like everything's flowing, and
Yeah.
it's just like the flow state. And
Yeah.
oh, I turned on the light. So yeah, I think I was trying to read the comments, but yeah, I think it's a combination that they go hand in hand, and if we can tap into the intuition and listen to it and make that state of flow in our life become a something, I won't call it consistent, but something dominant, then the more synchronicity comes out of it. And I also want to mention this one last thing, that we could really be open and be clean emotionally and mentally and physically and today, and not be that like 2 months from now, right?
Right.
Because we're human, things are constantly happening, emotions are constantly coming up. There's like, it would be great to make this as a part of our daily routine or weekly, or like I do a physical cleanse every season, right?
Yeah,
Every three
me too.
months, I do a physical cleanse, or emotional work. It's just like something very consistent. You can't like say, well, my intuition is working or whatever, I can hear it or whatever, and then like everything's flowing today, so I'm done, right? There's no end to it. So it's like if you want to keep it flowing, then there's more and more work and energy to put in it and keeping everything clear, rather than when things start tangling up, because they do, because we're human. We're like living this life anyways, and everything at the end of the day comes back to this human life. It doesn't matter what's going on. We're here. So to keep it consistent, I think is key.
You want to hear synchronicity? I diffuse oils, essential oils, all the time. And the one I diffused today, I've got tons of different blends. The one I'm diffusing right now in my office is Fearless.
There you go.
And here
There
we're
you go.
talking about it. So
About
there's
fear.
a little synchronicity for you guys.
Of course. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and for staying to the end. We appreciate you a lot, and for being a part of this. I truly enjoyed this. I think
Me too.
we're going to have more chats about
Yes.
this, but it was amazing. Thank you for your time and
Oh,
for your
thank
contribution
you.
to everybody.
Yeah, I know. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Parisa, and
Same
to
here.
have everybody be here. We've had a consistently good crowd here watching and listening. So thank you guys for joining us and being a part of this. And I definitely want to do more with you. Let's
Of
keep
course.
these lives going,
Of
girlfriend. I
course.
think we can share a lot more. Oh, thank you so much, guys. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.